He wasn't supposed to stay after hours, but neither was I supposed to let him pour me another drink. The glass touched the counter with a soft click, a sound too intimate for an office. He poured carefully, his fingers steady as the liquid caught the light. My reflection shimmered in the amber surface. Sharp suit, red lips, a woman who was supposed to know better. He said, "You look tired, ma'am." And I let him say it. I even smiled. Maybe I wanted to hear what surrender sounded like when spoken by someone too young to know its cost. The storm outside pressed against the glass walls, city lights bleeding into the room in fractured colors. I told myself to send him home, that it wasn't appropriate, that I didn't need his company or the warmth his presence brought. But when he lingered by the window, looking out at the rain as if it held the answers to something bigger than both of us, I didn't move. That was the moment I should have stopped everything. Instead, I asked him to sit. His name was Eli Carter. 24, fresh out of grad school, hired as my assistant after the last one left for a less demanding position. Or maybe she'd simply grown tired of me. People often did. I didn't request him. HR sent an email saying he came highly recommended, efficient, eager, adaptable. Words that meant nothing until I saw him standing in my office doorway on his first day. Sleeves rolled, tie loose, posture both respectful and quietly sure of itself. "Ms. Laurent?" he'd said, voice steady but soft. "I'm Eli, your new assistant." I looked up from my screen. He had the kind of presence that interrupted thought, not with noise but with stillness. I didn't answer right away, just studied him. He waited. Most people fidgeted under my silence. He didn't. That was my first mistake, noticing the way he held his ground. My world, until that morning, had been composed entirely of control. Every detail of my life had a place, a rhythm, a rule. My office, matte black shelves, chrome fixtures, glass doors, was an architecture of discipline. The kind of space that reflected who I was, clean, precise, untouchable. I built my reputation as a woman who never blurred the line, CEO at 37, creative director of an agency that sold beauty and power like oxygen. I taught people how to desire things without appearing to, and yet I hadn't felt desire in years. Not the raw chemical kind, the one that dissolves professionalism and patience in the same breath. Then he arrived. Eli. The first few weeks were harmless, polite exchanges, efficient work. He learned quickly, anticipated my needs before I spoke. Brought me coffee just how I liked it, double espresso, no sugar, always at 8:15 sharp. He never intruded, never overstepped. But there was something in his eyes, a quiet curiosity that bordered on dangerous, like he was trying to read the parts of me that weren't meant for anyone to see. Once, I caught him watching me through the glass wall while I was on a call. When our eyes met, he didn't look away immediately, just long enough for something to flicker between us. Recognition or warning, I couldn't tell. I told myself it was nothing, that he was too young, too naive, too good. But good things have a way of rotting fast when you keep them close to the heat. The night it began, the rain hadn't stopped for hours. The office was empty, the city humming below like a live wire. I stayed late to review a campaign draft. Something about luxury perfumes, the illusion of intimacy sold in glass bottles. Ironic, in hindsight. He was supposed to leave at 6. At 7:30, I heard his voice down the hall, low, speaking to someone from IT. By 8, the building was ours alone. I didn't tell him to go. I wanted to see how long he'd stay. He appeared in my doorway around 9, tie gone, shirt slightly wrinkled. He held 2 glasses and a bottle I kept for clients. "You shouldn't be drinking that," I said. "You shouldn't still be here," he replied. There was no defiance in his tone, just quiet boldness, the kind that didn't need permission. He poured the drink, waited for me to take it. I did. He told me he admired my work, how he'd followed my campaigns since college. He said I made ambition look effortless. I almost laughed. If he knew what it cost, the hours, the exhaustion, the isolation, he wouldn't have used the word effortless. People don't follow me because I'm easy to admire, I said. Maybe not, he answered, eyes on the city. But they can't look away. I looked at him, really looked. The rain reflected across his face like shifting glass, his expression unreadable. He didn't seem nervous. He seemed aware. That awareness unsettled me. It made me remember the woman I used to be, the one who before the world taught me that women like me weren't allowed to want anything that might make them human. The clock ticked past 10. The city outside blurred into streaks of light. We talked about nothing. Art, books, the sound of ordinary things. But the air between us wasn't ordinary. It was thick, slow, charged. Every silence stretched too long. Every look meant too much. He stood beside me at the window. I could feel the heat of him without touching. "Do you ever stop working?" he asked quietly. "Control is work," I said. He smiled, small and dangerous. "Then maybe you should take a break." The words shouldn't have hit the way they did. But something inside me flinched. Not in protest, but recognition. The lights. The storm deepened. I told him to go. He didn't. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the rain hitting glass and the slow exhale of two people pretending not to feel what they felt. When I finally... He was watching me the way a student watches a secret being revealed. Reverent, terrified, fascinated. "Go home, Eli." Voice softer than intended. He nodded, but didn't leave. He just whispered, "You didn't mean that." And maybe I didn't. After he left, I sat in the dark for a long time. My reflection stared back from the glass wall, composed and hollow. I told myself I was imagining it, that this was nothing, a trick of proximity and fatigue. But I couldn't stop replaying that look in his eyes. It wasn't youthful rebellion. It was understanding. And that terrified me more than attraction ever. The next morning, the world reset itself. He was back at his desk by 8, files neatly organized, expression new. Professional, controlled, like nothing except everything. In the boardroom that afternoon, he handed me a folder. Our fingers touched. A spark, not literal but felt. I didn't look at him, couldn't. I gave my presentation flawlessly, every word sharp, detached, persuasive. But I could feel his gaze. Not on but waiting. After the meeting, everyone filed out. Papers rustled, chairs scraped. He lingered at the door. I gathered my notes, pretending not to notice. When I finally looked up, he was watching me. The hum of the projector, the air. For a breath too long, neither of us moved. As quietly as he had come, he left, closing the glass door behind him. The sound echoed like a promise or a warning. That night, I couldn't sleep. The storm, but its ghost lingered. I dreamt of holding something fragile and pretending it wasn't alive. I could still hear his. "You didn't mean that." For the first years, he started saying my name differently. Not Ms. Laurent, not ma'am, just Clara. Like the word itself was a test of how far I'd let him go. Days passed without incident, at least on the surface. He was efficient, polite, focused, everything a professional assistant should be. And I was the model of restraint, calm, exact. But underneath, something had shifted. The air between us had memory now, of rain, of silence, of almosts. Every morning, I'd hear his footsteps outside my door before he knocked. Soft, deliberate. The kind of sound you start to anticipate before it happens. He'd hand me the day's schedule, his fingers brushing mine as if by accident. Always brief. Always enough. "Coffee?" he'd ask. I'd nod, pretending not to notice the pause before he set it down, pretending not to breathe in the warmth of his nearness. Control is a performance, one I had perfected long ago. But lately, the mask was slipping, and I wasn't sure I wanted to fix it. The agency was preparing for a high-profile campaign, one that could redefine our year. Weeks of late nights, deadlines, creative reviews, the kind of pressure that leaves everyone raw. He worked tirelessly, too tirelessly. I caught him watching me during client calls, his gaze steady through the glass wall, his expression unreadable. He should have looked tired, distracted, anything, but he looked focused. On me. One afternoon, I walked past his desk and noticed something. A small, lined notebook open beside his laptop. My name written at the top of a page, notes beneath it. Observations, not about work, but about me. She always pauses before she approves something. 3 seconds exactly. Never lets people see when she's angry. Her laugh sounds like she doesn't trust it. I should have felt invaded. Violated. Instead, I felt seen. When he realized I'd found it, he didn't panic. He just said quietly, "You read it?" "Yes," I replied. "And?" "Don't do it again." I left before he could see the way my hands shook. The following week blurred into exhaustion. Deadlines, meetings, the kind of chaos that erodes even the sharpest edges. He was everywhere, always a step behind me, always watching, always there. One night we stayed past midnight finalizing a presentation. The office was dark except for the desk lamp between us. I was rereading a script, but I couldn't focus. He leaned over my shoulder, his breath brushing my neck. "You missed something," he murmured. I didn't turn. "Show me." He pointed at a line on the page, but his hand didn't move away. I could feel the heat of his skin through the silk of my blouse. Every nerve in my body tightened, not in fear, but in awareness. "Eli," I said softly. "Yes." "You're too close." "Am I?" The words were innocent. The tone wasn't. I pushed my chair back, breaking the spell. "Go home," I said. He didn't move, just looked at me with that infuriating calm. "Why do you keep sending me away?" "Because you don't understand what you're doing." He smiled then, small and deliberate. "Don't I?" The next day I avoided him, sent instructions through email, kept meetings, professional distance, the illusion of control. But when someone knows you've noticed them, it's too late. Avoidance becomes its own kind of intimacy. By the third day, I gave up pretending. "Come," I said when he knocked. He closed the door behind him. For the first time, I noticed how quiet the office became when he was near, like the world held its breath. "You're angry with me," he said. "No," I replied. "Then what?" "Curious," I admitted before I could stop myself. He stepped closer. "About what?" "About whether you mean any of this." He looked at me for a long time. "I mean everything." I laughed, a sound that felt strange in my throat. "You're 24, Eli. So you don't know what you want?" He said, "But I know who I want." The words landed like a match in a room full of gasoline. I didn't respond. Couldn't. I just turned away, pretending to straighten the papers on my desk. That was when he said it, softly, deliberately, almost a whisper. My name. Out loud. I froze. He'd never said it before. Something inside me broke open, not a wall, but a window I didn't realize I'd sealed shut. After that, everything became a negotiation between sanity and temptation. The way he said good morning, the way he waited for my approval longer than necessary, the way his hand would close enough to feel, never enough to touch. Desire isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, precise, like a pen scratching against paper, like a breath caught between two syllables. I told myself I was testing him, seeing how far he'd go before he broke. But the truth was simpler, crueler. He wasn't the one being tested. I was. 2 weeks later, the campaign launched. Success. Applause. Champagne in the conference room. Everyone was celebrating. I should have felt triumphant. I felt empty. Eli found me standing alone by the glass wall, the city glittering below. Congratulations, he said. I turned to him. For what? For everything. For pretending you don't care. Before I could, thunder cracked, the storm returning like an omen. He stepped closer. The room emptied around us, voices fading, footsteps distant. It was again. Tell me to stop, he said. I wanted to. I didn't. He reached up, brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. The touch was so gentle it almost wasn't a touch at all. It undid me completely. I closed my eyes. You're playing with fire. So are you. For a moment, neither of us breathed. The world felt suspended, like gravity itself was holding its breath. Then I stepped back, just enough to make it clear. Not yet. Go home, Eli. He hesitated. You don't mean that. But this time he left. That night, I poured myself a drink, sat in the dark again. I could still feel where his hand had been, still hear his voice saying my name. Control, I realized, isn't the absence of want. It's the performance of not showing it. And I was starting to fail. The next morning, he wasn't at his desk. A note instead. Had to meet a client early. Back by noon, I stared at the empty chair longer than I should have. When he returned, I didn't ask where he'd been. But when he placed a coffee on my desk, it wasn't my usual. A message in a cup. You made a mistake, I said. He smiled faintly. Did I? That evening I found myself in the elevator with him, alone. The mirrored walls reflected us from every angle. He stood close enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar, smoke, something darker. He looked at our reflections, not at. Why are you afraid of this? I'm not. Yes, you are. You think you can control. I turned to face him. And you think you can handle. His eyes met mine, steady, certain. I already am. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. Neither of us moved for 3 seconds. 3 seconds exactly. Then I walked out, leaving him behind. That night, couldn't read. I replayed everything. The notebook, the touch, the name. He was inside my head, dismantling everything I built. By midnight, I understood what terrified me most. He didn't want to own me. He wanted to see me, and I didn't know how to exist under that kind of. The next day, during a client briefing, our hands brushed again. Accidental. Except it. The moment lingered. Later, when everyone left, I stayed behind, staring at the table where our fingers had met. He came back to collect his notes. We stood on opposite sides of the room, silence heavy but I shouldn't have let this go on, I said quietly. He tilted his head. Then end it. I looked up. You think it's that easy? No, he said. Because that's what you do. He stepped closer, close enough that I could see my reflection in his eyes. He whispered. Because this isn't control anymore. For the first time, I didn't have an answer. The rain returned again. Lightning flared across the skyline, throwing shadows through my office. Waiting. No reason. I didn't ask why. He didn't explain. We stood facing each other in silence. You should go, I said. He didn't move. Instead, he said softly, from the moment you didn't send me home. Finally, I crossed the space between us. Not a confession. Just a touch. My hand against his chest, his heart beneath it, steady, alive, dangerous. Move. The storm raged, and in that moment, control had already left. He said I ruined him. Maybe I did, but he walked into the fire, and I only showed him the match. The morning after the storm, everything looked too clear. The city was washed clean, glass glittering, streets shining, but inside the office nothing felt pure. The air itself seemed to remember. He didn't come in that day. Neither did I. For the first time in years, I called in sick. The lie came out easily. I'd built a career on controlled performances, but the truth was simpler. I couldn't face what I'd done, or worse, what I hadn't stopped. I spent the day in my apartment, surrounded by the silence I used to worship. The rain had left streaks on the windows, thin as veins. I watched them fade as the hours passed, telling myself I'd imagined everything. The touch, the look, the trembling in my own voice. But that night, when I closed my eyes, I could still feel his heartbeat under my palm. He returned the next morning. On time, perfectly composed. Good morning, Ms. Laurent, he said, as if the world hadn't cracked open 2 nights ago. I nodded, said nothing. We worked in silence. The air was sharp with restraint. Every click of the keyboard sounded like accusation. By noon, my nerves were raw. I called a break, walked out to the terrace, and breathed the cold air like punishment. He followed. You're avoiding, he said softly. I'm maintaining boundaries. He smiled without warmth. Now you want boundaries? The words hit harder than I expected. Eli, no, it's fine, he interrupted. I get it. You got what you needed. Control restored. I turned to face him. You think this is about control? Isn't it? His tone wasn't cruel. The exhaustion of someone who's seen through the illusion. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. That this wasn't manipulation. That something real had slipped between. But the words wouldn't. Because maybe it was control. Maybe. Not for pleasure, but for the ache of being. Rumors began soon after. Not direct. Whispers, half-glances, small silences in. The kind of gossip that doesn't need proof, only timing. He stayed professional, but I could feel the shift. People noticed how he looked at me, how quickly I looked away. Once, during a client dinner, I caught one of my colleagues watching us across the table, her gaze sharp, calculating. The next morning, she asked if everything was all right between you and your assistant. Yes, I said, with the practiced calm of a woman who's lied before. But inside, something cracked. Every secret, no matter how carefully kept, eventually leaks through. That week, he stayed late even when I didn't ask. His work was perfect, too perfect, the kind that comes from. You don't have to keep proving yourself, I said. He looked up from his laptop, eyes dark and tired. I'm not proving anything. I'm just waiting for you to stop pretending. Pretending what? That this didn't change you. I didn't answer. Because it had. He stood then, walked around my desk, and stopped just close enough for me to feel the static between us. "I can't keep doing this," he said. "You pull me in, then push me away. Every time I think I understand where I stand, you move the line." His voice cracked on the last word. Anger. Disappointment. "I never promised you anything," I said quietly. He laughed, soft, bitter. "You didn't have to." He started pulling away after that. Small at first. Late replies. Short answers. The kind of distance that feels louder than shouting. I told myself it was better this way. That he'd get bored. Find someone his age, forget me. But then I saw him one afternoon. One of the interns. Smiling. Relaxed. It shouldn't have mattered. It did. I spent the rest of the day in a meeting, staring at my notes, hearing nothing. For years I'd been untouchable. Now I was jealous, irrational, human. That night, I wrote him an email. 2 sentences. "You've done well. Take next week off. I'll manage." I hovered over the send button for almost a minute before pressing it. The next morning, his desk was empty. Absence felt like punishment. A week passed. The office returned to order. I should have felt relief. Instead, every quiet moment sounded like his name. On the 8th day, he came back. No greeting, no explanation. Just placed a folder on my desk and said, "You'll need these for the Paris account." His voice was calm, professional, unreadable. When I looked up, he was already turning to leave. "Eli," I said. He stopped but didn't face me. "Why did you come back?" He hesitated. "Because I wanted to see if you'd ask me to stay." I didn't. He nodded once, as if he'd expected that, and walked out. The sound of the door closing was quiet, final, familiar. I realized then, that was how control ends. Not in fire. Silence, weeks blurred. Projects finished, the world kept moving. But every now and then, I'd catch traces of him. A note in his handwriting, a file organized the way he used to do it. Small ghosts of a story no one knew existed. I told myself it was over. That I'd chosen survival, and I had. But desire, when it should. It lingers. In memory, in sound, in the way a room someone's been in it. One evening, after months of distance, he appeared in my doorway again. He looked older, or maybe just tired. "I'm leaving," he said. "Another agency offered me a position." I nodded. "Congratulations. That's all you're going to say? What else is there?" He laughed softly. "Nothing, I guess. Just thought you might care." "I do," I said. "Too much." That made him pause. "Then why?" "You want me to be, Eli?" He looked at me for a long time, eyes full of questions. Answer. Almost whispering. "You already are." Left without another word. When the elevator doors closed behind him, I felt something inside. Not dramatically, just quietly. Like a building finally giving in after years of pressure. Rumors died. Work continued. But some nights when the office was empty and the city lights stretched across the glass, I'd hear echoes, footsteps, laughter, his voice saying my name. Sometimes it might have happened if I hadn't stopped. If I'd let the fire burn, maybe he would have stayed. Maybe I would have fallen apart faster. Either way, the ending was always the same. Destruction. Power and love don't coexist. One devours the other. Months later, I received a postcard. No return address. Just 2 lines in familiar handwriting. "I learned control from you. I'm still trying to forget how it felt. I kept it. I shouldn't have. But I did." Sometimes I think about him. About that storm, that silence, that single moment when the air between us became something uncontainable. He's probably somewhere else now. In another office, another life, building his own empire. But I know what I left him with. The knowledge that desire is never clean, and control is only an illusion. And he left me with the worst kind of... the kind that doesn't fade. That I am capable of burning everything I built. Something again. Final image. She stands in her office at night. It's off, city reflected in the glass. On her desk, the postcard. The storm begins again. Faint thunder, distant rain. She closes her eyes and smiles without joy. He'll remember me as the woman who taught him control. He'll never know how much I lost keeping mine.